The Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at The Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Imagine training for an Ironman competition. Some call it the toughest day in sports. Physically feeling like you're in the best shape of your life. And then 6 days prior, you get a diagnosis that you have colon cancer. How would you react? Well, today's guest, Ronald Smith, he reacted by completing that Ironman. And now he bravely battles colon cancer. So please, let's jump right in to my interview with Ronald Smith. Hey, Ron, how's it going? Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Charles, how you doing? Nice to see you again.
Yeah, always a pleasure to speak with you, Ron. For folks in the audience, Ronnie and I go way back. Northeast Catholic Falcons here, high school. Great knowing Ronnie over the years, and I personally take a lot of motivation from Ronnie and some of the things he does. Ron, for the audience who may not know you or may not have seen our previous podcast from a little while back, maybe just a little brief introduction about you and what you do.
Okay. So thanks, Charles. So I do, basically a little bit of everything. I do help people, achieve their financial goals. I manage employee benefits for companies. I have some rental properties that we deal with. So married to my wife, going to be 30 years this year. Have 4 beautiful daughters. Just happy to live life. Want to just try to always keep improving every single day.
Yeah, Ron, and you do a great job, obviously, in your professional life. I'll be honest. I think I'd said to you before, we had a couple of clips from our last episode that at least for me, they went kind of viral. You made some great points, and I think people really got a lot of benefit out of it. And considering it was in the very beginning of when I started this show, and obviously I've gotten, I'll say, a little better. Back then, I mean, thanks for you helped me work through what could have been a train wreck, and it turned out really well. So anybody that hasn't seen that and you want to, I would recommend checking out the first episode I did with Ronnie last year. It's definitely worth it. But Ron, I don't want to talk that much about your professional life. I wanted to use today a couple reasons. I mean, obviously I mentioned about the motivational factor. I love following you on social media, your posts, the way you really try to, get people motivated, and your fitness routine. I wanted to get into that. And then obviously we're going to talk about something extremely serious that I found out about you when I spoke to you briefly over the holidays. So Ron, if you could maybe let some people know, I know your fitness has always been important to the point that you've competed in some Ironman competitions. Could you maybe talk about that a bit?
Sure. So, in high school we played, football, and just going through, life, you always want to just try to keep in shape, especially, with a bunch of young kids. So a few years ago when I turned 40, friends of mine just wanted to start to do some different competitions. So, we started out doing Tough Mudders, and then we did, a first triathlon down at the shore. And I always said that was like the gateway drug. So since then, I've towed the line of 3 different Ironmans. I completed 2 of them, and I DNF'd on my first one. And that one probably was my most important one, because I think the lessons that I learned in the failure of that one kind of helped me a lot in life. So, that's why I always try to post motivational stuff, because a lot of times, in my business and just seeing people, on a personal level, things always don't go in a straight line. And a lot of times it's very easy for people to get discouraged, fall, into bad habits of, trying to heal the pain with some, substances or, just, drinking. And, I found that it's a little bit easier to, just as long as you focus on the goal of what you want to do. I mean, as one of my favorite guys that I listen to in the morning, because I listen to motivational podcasts every morning, and one of my favorites is Steve Harvey. He always calls this stuff dirt. He's like, everything beautiful has some dirt on it. Every flower, every tree, wouldn't be there because if you just threw the seed on the sidewalk, it would just burn up. But it's got to have some dirt on it, and eventually, it blooms into something beautiful. So, that's kind of how I try to look at some certain things of how to get through bad times, in your life. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of catch up, to kind of go over some things that I've been experiencing, just to kind of let people know stuff doesn't always go, according to plan. And, with constant motivation and making progress every day, you can kind of get through things.
Yeah, Ron. And I think, you bring up a really valid point about the failure. So I wanted to ask you, because I know it wasn't this way for me until more recently. I didn't deal well with failure. Failure would conquer me. I would lose to failure constantly. If I failed, I would stop. Were you always I'll say failing forward? Was it always, if you failed, you learned, or was it something you started to, pick up later in life?
It probably started when I was young, because, growing up, let's say if you did something bad, my mom, I think the way that she was raised was, what does crying do for you? Think, and it's just, I think that's a double-edged sword, because, my wife calls me a human chair because she says I have no emotion. But it's just one of those things where, you take, you're allowed to take a moment. And the one thing that I have learned, because I did some coaching with a guy, Phil Coons, who's a Navy SEAL. He taught me two really important lessons. One was, it's okay to not be okay. Because, being a guy, it's always, everybody wants to be macho and put this brave face out there, and I'm okay. And he was just he's like, basically in the teams, you're allowed to say hey, I'm not okay. I need some help. And part of that, which goes hand in hand, was, he said, there's no Rambo in the teams. He said, the SEALs operate in a team, so, everybody has to rely on each other, and, stuff is going to happen. So it's important to build, a team of people that you can trust, because life just doesn't, go always as planned. So I think that that's something that, people should look to, who are the 5 people that they could count on when things go a little sideways.
Yeah, Ron. And I think we've talked about that on this show a lot lately, about that exact phrase. It's okay not to be okay. And I think that it's starting to finally sink in to people. And I think, obviously, we're very same age, I think we were raised very similar, and it was, you cry, you held it in, you did whatever. And I think, unfortunately, that doesn't work anymore, especially as you get older, because I think the topics become a lot more serious and the stresses become more serious. And you need that outlet. And I think just knowing that it's okay not to be okay, I think it helps. And, but I think for somebody like you, who's focused on fitness, staying in shape, I mean, Ron, you think that has a big impact mentally on you, and it helps you to be more prepared to handle any types of failures or anything, negative that's happening in your life?
I personally do. And I think that that's why, the whole concept of doing the Ironman was such a big draw to me, because, when you look at the totality of what that day would entail, they call it the single toughest day in sports, and I've never been particularly athletic, to like, I was mediocre at basically everything. I think I've only run one 5K in my entire life. So it's not like was like I really progressed. It was just something about the appeal of that. And the other thing where it kind of like it draws you to there is the people that seem to be doing those type of events are just awesome. I just did the Ironman Florida, just in November, and there was a group of people, it was called Team Cowbell. They were part of my triathlon club that I belonged to down the shore, and just you're in a group chat. They were doing some joint workouts. It was just more of like you had a really great support system, and then when you went down there to Florida, you had some people to kind of like just be around, because, the day of the event is kind of overwhelming, so it was more of like you at least had a friendly face to, kind of look at and just get some comfort from.
Yeah. And Ron, on the one you talked about a little bit on the Ironman that you ended up not completing,
Mm-hmm.
during that, what's going through your mind? I imagine there's points in that where you start to think about it, that I'm not going to finish this. Like, I'm curious, walk us through that. Like, what's that like? Because I don't think it's just like stop and you're done, right? I imagine you probably for an amount of time were questioning yourself and throughout. Is that how it kind of happens?
Yeah. So, with that one, the funny thing was like, I was never a good swimmer. Like when I first started doing triathlon, growing up in the city, swimming was just bobbing up and down in the public pool. There was no formal swim team, didn't take swim lessons. And when I started doing these triathlons, like I was the guy that the lifeguards would basically hand off and say, watch this guy. Like it's just funny how it happened.
Mm.
So I focused so much on the swimming. And so I got through the swim, the 2.4 mile swim, and I made it through 101 miles on the bike. But I hit something and like I fell on my bike, and like there was a little, something was not right with the bike. So I was waiting for the support vehicle. And by the time the support vehicle came and was able to help me, they basically said, you're not going to make the cutoff. Mm. So, and that was absolutely devastating because, imagine you just swam 2.4 miles and you just made, through 101 miles on the bike. And I felt okay. Like, physically I felt okay. It was just more of, I just wasn't going to make the cutoff. So they pulled me off. Mm. That, and when I said, like, I took some consolation in that because, like, there's a saying that it kind of stuck with me. It was remember tomorrow, because the next day when you're in the shower, like all you can think of, like, did you do enough? Like, what made me not, have enough cushion in my time to allow for an event like that, so it wasn't like I blamed the bike. I blamed, I hit the rock or whatever. It was more of like, okay, what could I have done better? Because it really bothered me, and literally I didn't do another race for, I did that one in 2016 and I finished, the one that I did complete was in 2018. So it was basically like a smoldering inside of me that I knew that I could do better, but I also realized it was something that you just can't will, you can't will yourself to finish that race without the training. So it was the next time I just made sure that I was a little bit more diligent in doing the training and was ultimately able to finish that one.
So Ron, a good segue. So obviously you're an extremely busy professional. And we always hear, and I was so guilty of this, I don't have time, where am I going to do this? Right. So like you obviously being a busy professional, how do you fit it in? How do you make it work? All the training that needs to happen.
When you do these type of races, it's more about the build, so you don't just go out and say, okay, I'm going to run 3 hours today. I had a coach, who was great. We had like a initial fitness, assessment, and it's basically, you're doing something 6 days a week, and it's more of like you're swimming today, you're swimming in the morning, you'll do a little bit of running when you get home. And the concept is more of like you're just increasing the load over time, a little bit at a time, so that way your body doesn't, get shocked or you don't get injured. And eventually, let's say, your half-hour bike rides are now 2-hour bike rides, and I mean, the challenging portion was on the weekends. It was more of like, that's when your long events were, you had to do your long events. So like towards the end, I was getting up at 2 a.m. on a Saturday to do a 7-hour bike ride, because what I didn't want to have is, this take away from my family time. So you get up at 2 a.m, you hop on the bike by 2:30, and you're on the bike till 9:30. I mean, so by the time everybody else is up and having their coffee and get ready for the day, you could go get a shower and you kind of fumble through it and kind of get through it. And then Sunday you just crash and recover.
Well, I mean, Ron, I think it's a great example though to everyone, because obviously it's not as extreme for everyone of doing an Ironman, right? But it's, when you think about it, you're really setting that example for someone, especially starting the year like a lot of us do. We have resolutions, which I hate that word. I like to talk about goals. Is, I don't have time. Where am I going to fit it in? So obviously, if it's important enough, you'll make the time and you'll figure it out. And I think that's what you show there. And if you want something bad enough, you're going to do it. So Ron, obviously you're in shape. You just, you complete another Ironman. You talked about it. And, I fast forward a little bit. I talked to you over the holidays, and, kind of took me back a bit, especially with, I mean, as only you can, a bit of a nonchalant way. You kind of broke some news to me about your health. Could you share that with everyone?
Yeah. So, in training for this Ironman that we did in November, but I kind of got some shocking news when I was going through this, because I turned 50 last year, I had a colonoscopy in April, all clear, everything was fine, but during the training I noticed that I had some bleeding, some rectal bleeding that was coming, and getting towards the end of it, I was like, if I better get this checked, because I don't know if it's an injury, and part of the problem that I had was it was started affecting my swimming, because I mean, during the summer it was easy to overcome that, because I would be able to swim in the ocean, whereas, come, September and October, I wasn't even able to do swimming. So imagine you're getting ready to doing a 2.5-mile swim, and you can't really swim and practice that for that event, because I was having some bleeding. So I went in to the doctor, and basically what they did was they did a follow-up colonoscopy, and they decided, they found out on literally 6 days before the Ironman that I had colon cancer. So it was one of those things where it was kind of like a shock in the face, and it kind of prompted me to have this conversation about maybe breaking out this podcast, because here I am literally 6-7 days away from doing an Ironman race, and you discover that maybe you're not, maybe there was something wrong inside your body, and I just basically wanted to maybe throw this out to the world, because I didn't really tell anybody, so like I said, it's not like there's no GoFundMe pages on Facebook, or no pity parties like that, because like I said, I have a great support system. The doctors at MD Anderson are awesome. But it was one of those things where I wanted to just really relate to people of New Year's, it's New Year's resolution. Everybody says the same thing. I want to save money. I want to lose weight. I want to do this, but by February, you're still doing the same thing. You're housing the Oreos, and you're still doing the same stuff, and I just wanted to maybe, give this, my personal perspective of sometimes you run out of time, and the reason I brought that up is because, I mean, when you get the news, as a provider, as a father, as a husband, you immediately think of like the C word of like, oh my God, am I going to die? And then it comes to you as like, if I die, if I don't come home tomorrow, what's going to happen to my family? So, I wanted to just kind of share this because everybody, they know they have to do certain things, but it's very easy to push things off because life just gets in the way, and if nothing else, this isn't about like, triathlon or Ironman at all. It's really about somebody who went from not taking one medication, at all. Like I didn't take a pill, blood pressure pill, an aspirin, anything, to like 10, 12 pills a day, going through radiation, just to kind of fight this. And it changed on a dime. So, at a time where I felt like I was in one of the best shapes of my life because I was 7 days away from doing an Ironman.
Man, Ron. And so you find out you're close to doing the Ironman. You actually went and did that one, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So was there thoughts of not doing it?
My wife was, kind of concerned. I broke it to my coach, and they were like, "Hey, whatever you want to do," So I said, I said, I have to meet with the surgeon anyway. So we met with the surgeon, and I basically said, what do you think? Can I do it? So, the funny thing was, he took me in a room next door, stuck a camera, and it came back. He's like, if you can do it, you might as well, because you're not going to be doing one for a long time. So,
Okay.
So I had, I had every opportunity to just quit and nobody would fault me at all, but at that point, I was also at the same time, I was almost more determined to do it because I had worked so hard and I wasn't going to go out that way, and I wanted to, I think I just wanted to maybe show like my kids really that, shit's going to happen. It's just, for lack of a better word, that,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't give you the excuse to just take the easy way out all the time.
Man, Ron, I mean, the fact that you find that out, you go and finish and you do it. I mean, it's a credit to you, and what an example to not just your family, Ron. Honestly, it's an example to a lot of people, because there's people that are going through a lot, but there's people that are, it's a lot, but it's way less than that. So it just shows that, you can overcome these things. Now, my curious, when you said that to me, what the doctor said to you, my first reaction was when he said you're not doing one for a while, knowing you, are you saying, yeah, watch me, we'll see? Are you going to attempt to do one?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, so that way I don't get, beaten up later on, when I go home. So, I'm definitely, this year, I'm definitely on the sidelines this year, so I had signed up for races this year, but, they're obviously going to get deferred. It's possible because, it's part of me. But again, where I think, training for Ironman or just, some of these harder events, it's helping me get through this because nothing is immediate. You would like, originally we were like, okay, fine, let's go for surgery. And they're like, no, that's not how it works. It's like, you got 8 weeks of chemo and radiation. Then we're going to give you a couple weeks break. And then we're going to go and, remove it. You're going to have to wear a bag for 3 months. Then we'll put you back together. So, that's a long road and nothing happens right away, but I'm kind of used to slow, steady progress. So that's where I kind of have to just focus on, I'm going to trade 6, 7 shitty months for, like 30 more years is where that's where my mindset's at.
And Ron, even watching you speak about it all, like honestly, like, and we kind of talked about this a little bit even before we got on here. It's not easy, obviously, and it doesn't sound like fun at all. And the fact of the way you're handling it with such, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't expect anything less from you, man. You're handling it, head on, and I think this is really, really a good a good example for a lot of people. I mean, Ron, I'll be quite frank. I think it's a great example for, and we see a lot of people that we went to school with, right? I mean, I hope some of them happen to see this, if I'm being quite frank, because I think everybody, even me, when I heard from you that night, I kid you not, man, the night I talked to you and you told me about your diagnosis, I had a workout that was it's going to be something difficult the next day that I was kind of thinking about backing out on. I heard from you, literally went, yeah, I ain't backing out of this, man. I'm there, and I mean, and I told you this before, just the little things that you post. I know you may not think that people are watching, but people are watching and people see it. I know it impacted me, man. Even going back a couple of years, I would see it. And, I was in, obviously it wasn't cancer, thank God, but from what I was struggling with, my weight and all that stuff, guys like you were guys I did look up to about, I can be better. And you guys were the ones who were setting the example, so I can't thank you enough for that, man. And I hope people do see this and they really take it serious. And, you gave us a lot to think about in that first podcast about the financial health. And now you even top it with thinking about the physical and what you're going through. But I mean, Ron, so I'm going to leave it with this. What would you say to somebody who's going through, who gets that, somebody's watching this, they just got a diagnosis of cancer. I mean, what do you say to them? How do they get their mind ready? How do they fight this fight?
Probably the biggest thing that I would tell them is pay attention to the people around you, because literally, just kind of come in waves. You have good days and bad days, and good, but the amount of awesome people that just shoot me a text, give me a call, reach out to me on a daily basis. They seem to know when you're having a bad day. It's like the universe is kind of throwing it in your way, throwing them in your way. But pay attention to the people that are around you, and then the other thing is also kind of gives you a little bit different focus in life of, it's very easy to kind of get in a rut of you're doing the same thing every week and every weekend. And Monday, January doesn't look much different than February, and, you're not really progressing. But I mean, it's given me some insight to, yeah, I was on a good path, but maybe it's not the path that I want, or maybe I was slow playing, where I need to get to in terms of my goals, because I felt like I had more time, so it does give you that, stiff, right hook to the chin of, yeah, maybe you're not where you need to be. So, you just take a self-assessment and say, am I the best dad, friend, husband, brother, sister, can I be better at some of these things, in my life?
Ron, I think that's a great way to end it. I think that's solid advice. And, listen, man, from me to you, I got to be honest with you, man, from the day you told me about this, there hasn't been a day that's went by that I haven't thought about you and what you're going through, man. And I want to continue that, man. I can't wait to see you all put back together, and I can't wait to do the next podcast. Round 3 is going to be when you're doing the next Ironman. So we're going to book that, everybody. I know Ronnie might get in trouble for that, but it's me. We're going to book that. We're going to do the third podcast with Ronnie. It's going to be after he does the next Ironman. So Ron, I wish you nothing but the best and support, man. And obviously if there's anything I can ever do, I'm here, man. That's what I want to leave you with.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chow.
Yep. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. And like I said, whatever you're going through, think of it, it could be worse, could be better, but it could be worse. Just stick with it and keep moving forward.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.